In this video, we will see 3 different ways of connecting a compute engine VM to a Cloud SQL instance in Google Cloud. We will look into connecting using a public IP, then using a private IP, then using a Cloud SQL proxy, and we'll discuss the pros and cons of each method. The commands we use and the URLs will be available in the video description below. And if you want to support the channel, you can like the video or consider subscribing. There's a lot of Google Cloud content already on the channel and more coming up. Thank you. We will start by opening the Google Cloud console, so console.cloud.google.com. And in here in project selector, we will create a new project. We can leave the name as it is. It's not important. And let's take a note of this project ID. It says Rock Drake 371100. It will take a few seconds for the project to create. And once it's created, we can switch to the newly created project. And also, we have to make sure billing is enabled for our project. So in the search bar, you can search for billing. So just in here, navigate to the billing page. And if we scroll down on the menu on the left and we go to account management, we have to make sure that the project we just created is listed here. So it's this one. It says Rock Drake 371100. Now we will create the Cloud SQL instance. So also in the search bar, we can search for SQL. So I use the search bar to navigate between different Google Cloud products. It's easier this way. And in here, we will click on Create Instance. We'll use MySQL for now. It says that we first need to enable Compute Engine API, so we will do that. We landed on this SQL instance creation. It already pre-populated with a previous instance I created, but it's incorrect. So in here, we will give it a name. Let's call it GCE-SQL. We need to generate a password, and you need to copy this password somewhere. I will copy it off screen. We need to use it later. Okay. In here, MySQL version, we can use MySQL 8. Then the region and zonal availability. This depends on you, on where you want to deploy your application. I will use US West 4 because it's my local database. And I can use a single zone. This is just test. We are doing development here. And now we can customize our instance. So we expand this type. First, the machine type. So by default, Google Cloud allocates a pretty expensive machine type. So from here, we will use shared core, the smallest instance available, which is 1 CPU and 0.6 gigabytes of RAM. If we search for Cloud SQL pricing, so in here, we will see the price per CPU and per gigabyte of memory. So if we just take this this CPU figure, so I think it was allocating 1 CPU. So in our case, it will be 0.0442. This is per hour. Actually, we can switch to monthly. So just 1 CPU is $32 a month. And by default, Google Cloud wanted to allocate maybe like 3 or 4 CPUs, which will take us into hundreds of dollars. So be careful how you initialize your instance, you can end up spending a lot of money if you're not careful. Storage is not very expensive, but we will just use the smallest amount. Okay, and now the important part is this one right here. So we can choose between a public IP, a private IP, or both. And after watching this video, depending on which method you decide to use, in here you can select one or the other. So if you decide to connect by public IP, you only select public IP. Otherwise, you will only select private IP. But because we try all three methods in this video, we will select both public and private IP. And also for the private IP, we need to select one network. So we select the default network in here. And also we need to enable this private services access connection required. So we'll need to go first enable the API. And in here, we can let Google allocate an IP range for us. Okay, this looks good. Okay. Moving downwards in configurations. Yeah, data protection, it can do automatic backups. This is good for now. Yeah, maintenance. It all looks good. We can now click on create instance, and it will actually take probably 10 minutes, 20 minutes. So yeah, I will skip forward in the video. The instance was created. We can see here our green check mark. And now we will create a database on our instance. Let's call this one Vlad. You can give it whatever name you want. Now we can look into the first method of connecting Compute Engine to Cloud SQL, and that is by public IPs. I'm going to open a new tab with Google Cloud. So right-click on the logo and open a new tab. And in here, I will search for Compute Engine to navigate to the Compute Engine product. And now we can create a new instance in here. So the name, it's not very important for now. It's hard to change after you create the instance to change its name. So if it matters, set up a good name in the beginning. In here, it's good to choose the same region as the database is in. So the traffic inside the same region is very fast and also is free. If you send traffic inside Google Cloud between regions, there's usually a small fee associated. It's not a big deal, but also it's slower. In here, I will choose the smallest instance type available, E2 Micro. And unlike Cloud SQL, Google Cloud actually provides a cost estimate on this page, which is nice. In here, yeah, we won't deploy any containers. We will use the Compute Engine default service account. This will be important in when we use the third method by Cloud SQL proxy. So in here, we will allow full access. And for the advanced options, so inside networking, we have to make sure we use the same network interface that Cloud SQL used. In this project, we only have this default interface, so this one is good. And in here, we can, so for the public IP connection method, which is the one we are doing right now, we need to allocate a reserved IP address, not use an ephemeral one, and we will see later why. So we will click in there and create IP address, and we need to give it a name. So let's just call it GCE.IP and reserve it. And the reason is because we need to whitelist this IP into the Cloud SQL instance. If you are connecting by private IP or by Cloud SQL proxy, you don't need to reserve static IP for the VM. So continuing down the list, it all looks good. We can go ahead and create the VM. Next, we need to whitelist this external IP that we reserved for our VM. We need to add it to the Cloud SQL instance. So we can copy it from here. And if we go to the tab with Cloud SQL, in here we need to go to connections. And below public IP, there's this section called authorized networks. So we can do add network in here and paste our IP. Also in here, we can paste a range of IPs or multiple IPs. So there are multiple options. I think technically, if we don't reserve an IP, we can allow all the IPs on the internet to access this instance. It's probably not the best idea. I usually choose to use a reserved IP for VMs and just add them in here when using public IPs. And we need to give it a name. So we just, let's say GCE VMs for now. And we click on save, and it will take a few seconds to update. Now we can connect to our VM in Compute Engine and try the connection method. So we're just going to use this browser SSH client. In here, it will launch shortly. Okay, so first we need to install a SQL client in here. Unfortunately, the MySQL client is not available in an individual package. We need to install everything, including the server. But we have this package with the MariaDB client, which is compatible to MySQL. So we'll do sudo apt-get install. This is a Debian instance, it says right here. So it has apt-get. And the package that we need to install is MariaDB-client. Okay, and now we can try it out. So the command will be MariaDB, the user. We will connect with the root user to our database. On our instance, we can create new users and set passwords, reset passwords, etc. from this UI in here, users. But we will just use root. And we will use the flag -p. It will prompt us to enter the password. And for the host, we will connect to the public IP of our SQL instance. So in here in connections, no, actually it's in overview, sorry. Yeah, we just use this public IP from here. We copy it like that, and this should work. And now the password is the password we generated and saved when we created the SQL instance. So I told you back then that we'll need it later. So I just pasted it from off screen. And now we have a SQL prompt, and we can just use SQL commands. We can see here the database we created, Vlad. We can connect to it, create tables, create table, let's say users, name, like that, insert into users, values, say Bobson. And select star from users. You don't have to run these commands, it's just you make sure that it's indeed our SQL database. Connecting by public IP is useful when you are trying to make your Cloud SQL instance available externally. For example, if you have a backend running in AWS or a different cloud provider, then you can use this method. However, you need to reserve static IPs for the Cloud SQL instance and for your VMs. They're not very expensive. We can take a look here. Let's say Google Cloud networking pricing. So in here, it says static IP address is 0.4 cents. So if we copy this thing times 24 times 30, that will be about $3 per static IP per month. And we use 2 static IPs, one for the Cloud SQL, one for the VM. If you have multiple VMs, you will have to assign more IPs. And also another downside is that because you expose it publicly on the internet, it can be a security threat. For example, if you don't use SSL connections, if your password gets compromised, if you are accessing your Cloud SQL database just internally in Google Cloud, in my opinion, a private IP is a better option, and we can try it out next. So in here, it's actually very simple because we configured the same network for our VMs and our Cloud SQL instance. We just need to copy this private IP from here. So we run this command again, but this time we replace the host with the private IP address, and we enter the root password again, and we will see that we have a connection again. We can select. We can run a select in the table we just created, and we see we have the same data. And the last method that we will showcase is the Cloud SQL proxy. So we are going to stop this connection with Control D. So we will search for a Cloud SQL proxy. This is a method that we would use normally on our local machine. So it will create a proxy on the local machine on a port or on a Unix socket that we can then use to connect. So there's this script that we need to download for our platform. This our VM is running Debian on a 64-bit. So this version is the one we need. So we can just run it in here. Oh yeah, we don't have wget, so we need to install it. Sudo apt-get installed wget. And now if we try again to download this script and give it execution permissions. So now I think in here there should be an example on how to use it. Let's see. Cloud SQL proxy. Yeah, we'll just use the help. Cloud SQL proxy -help. If we scroll up in help for the Cloud SQL proxy, there should be an example on how to proxy on a socket. Yeah, it's this one from here. This is the argument that we need to provide. So we're just going to copy that one. And again, we run again Cloud SQL proxy and paste this argument. So the part after equal says that it will create a proxy on localhost on port 3306. But we need to fill in the connection name in the part before equals. So in here, we can get this connection name if we go to in the browser in Cloud SQL, and in overview there will be this field called connection name that we need to copy and fill in the command. So what the Cloud SQL proxy does is it will use the current user logged in into the VM, and by default all the VMs use the compute engine default service account. So we will need to give Cloud SQL permissions to this service account. And for doing this, we need to go to Identity and Access Management. So I'm going to open a new Google Cloud tab. And in the bar, we will search for IAM, stands for Identity and Access Management. So in here, we see all the users that we have in this Google Cloud project. And the one that we are interested in is this one that says Compute Engine Default Service Account. So we edit the principal, click on that pencil, and we need to add another role. And in here, we need to add Cloud SQL Client. There are other Cloud SQL's roles that have more privileges, but this one is the minimum role that we need to add. So we click on Save. And now if we run this command, oh yeah, it says that we don't have a Cloud SQL admin API, so we will need to enable this one as well. Yeah, let's try it again. So we copy this URL. And we need to enable it. Okay, good. And then now if we run this command again, yeah, we will see it says ready for new connection. The problem with the proxy is that it blocks the input, but we can stop it with Control-C, and we will run it in the background. We just add an ampersand at the end of the command to start the command in the background. Like that. And now we just connect to MariaDB like we did earlier. But now the host address is localhost or 127.0.0.1. And we enter the password one last time. And again, we see the databases in here. And we see the data that we had before. As I said, this Cloud SQL proxy is a tool that I would use more frequently when developing locally. In production is a bit harder to use because on a VM, you will need to start this command to run in the background, and then your backend service running on the VM will access this proxy on localhost. But then if the proxy process dies, then the backend is left hanging. It doesn't have a connection anymore. So it is a bit of a problem. Also, as we discussed earlier, the Cloud SQL instances are very expensive. Also, the IPs have a cost. So if you don't use this project or instance right now, you just did it for the tutorial purpose, I would recommend you delete the Cloud SQL instance and release the IPs, or just delete the entire project altogether. This is all the material for today. There are more Google Cloud videos on this channel. Some of them will show up on the screen. If you have questions, please ask in the comment section below. I will try to help you out. Thank you for watching.